Every so often, a single airbase comes to symbolize the tectonic shifts in global power. This year, the sprawling ghost of Bagram Airbase in Afghanistan has emerged as the world's new strategic crucible, attracting serious interest from every major power in Eurasia. Donald Trump's recent warning: if Afghanistan doesn't give Bagram Airbase back to those that built it, the United States of America, bad things are going to happen, crystallizes a drama that's been brewing since the United States' hurried withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. Let's decode why Bagram matters, why China plans to hold on to it, how the United States regrets its humiliating exit, and how the base's fate is entangled with bold covert operations stretching all the way to Pakistan's Balochistan province, where America, leveraging CIA resources and Afghan assets, is determined to foil China's grand CPEC plan. Bagram Air Base isn't just concrete and razor wire. For 2 decades, it was America's power projection fulcrum for the War on Terror. Located some 60 kilometers north of Kabul, Bagram's long, reinforced runways could launch nuclear-capable bombers and vast cargo planes. Its perimeter bristled with hardened gun nests and sensor arrays, capable of thwarting ground assaults and monitoring airspace for hundreds of kilometers. Deep within the base, secure command centers coordinated everything from surgical raids on Taliban hideouts to wide-area surveillance over Central Asia. Dozens of drones operated out of Bagram daily, gathering intelligence not just on threats in Afghanistan, but tracking developments in China, Iran, and Pakistan. The base's hospital rivaled those in American cities, and its detention facilities housed some of the most wanted insurgents and terrorists, subject to enhanced interrogation protocols designed for high-value targets. When the U.S. evacuated in August 2021, the exit was catastrophic. Commanders cut power without warning, abandoned vast stores of equipment, and departed under cover of night, leaving even Afghan allies in the dark about their intentions. Taliban fighters entered Bagram within hours, flashing victory signs as they toured abandoned barracks, examining sophisticated American hardware left on tarmacs, and unlocking command centers that only weeks before coordinated multinational operations. These scenes were broadcast globally, turning into a PR bonanza for both the Taliban and their Chinese and Russian supporters. The U.S. withdrawal was branded as the greatest military humiliation of the early 21st century, leaving an indelible stain on America's self-image and shaking allies' faith in Washington's staying power. Now, Bagram's fate is no longer an internal Afghan matter. Since the Taliban takeover, China has moved quickly to convert Bagram into a major listening post. Satellite imagery and on-the-ground reports suggest Chinese technicians are installing a web of radars, signal intercept arrays, and secure data transmitters designed to monitor rival military movements from India to Kazakhstan. The Belt and Road Initiative, China's trillion-dollar infrastructure agenda, cuts through Afghanistan, with key nodes in Bagram hosting Chinese economic planners and security experts. China isn't just watching. Its airfield presence allows for the rapid deployment of drones and commandos against potential threats, be they anti-Chinese rebels or remnants of ISIS. Why does the U.S. want Bagram back? The answer lies in geography and ambition. Only a few hundred kilometers separate Bagram from China's western border and its nuclear weapons manufacturing centers in Xinjiang. Restoration of American assets at the base would enable Washington to surveil Chinese strategic developments with little notice, interdict destabilizing militant flows, and reinforce India's defensive posture by balancing out the China-Pakistan-Iran axis rising in the region. Bagram would become the hub for future counterterrorism operations against both ISIS-K and resurgent al-Qaeda, groups the Taliban claim to attack, but which Western intelligence suspects they manipulate for diplomatic leverage. But reclaiming Bagram is complicated. Taliban leaders know China and Russia want America kept out. Kabul's negotiators are leveraging the base for prestige, economic aid, and international recognition, while the U.S. is left to explore creative inducements, sanctions relief, infrastructure investment, and even back-channel diplomacy with Pakistani intermediaries. Nothing, so far, has moved the Taliban to cede control. Meanwhile, U.S. officials and think tanks mourn the missed opportunity, blaming Trump's flawed 2020 peace agreement and Biden's execution of the retreat. Trump's own rhetoric is harsh. He calls the base's abandonment an error of gross incompetence and signals, "We want it back," tying the push directly to countering Chinese expansion, securing rare earth minerals, and preventing Russia and the Taliban's intelligence services from using terrorist capabilities with impunity. In this great game, India and Pakistan are not mere spectators. For India, the possibility of Bagram becoming the headquarters for Chinese and Pakistani intelligence worries strategists. Afghanistan's new political order tilts increasingly towards Pakistan, whose ISI has supported Taliban leadership for decades, while China provides aid, investment, and strategic cover. Indian security planners fear encirclement, Chinese radar arrays in Bagram, Pakistani assets in Kabul, and a cross-border corridor threatening stability in Kashmir and spillovers into western India. India responds by deepening defense ties with U.S. and the Quad nations, accelerating intelligence sharing, and launching covert diplomatic initiatives with anti-Taliban factions scattered across Afghanistan's north. Pakistan views Bagram as a lever for steering both Taliban policy and China's regional investment. The ISI facilitates Chinese arms deals, counterinsurgency operations against Uyghur militants, and direct mediation with Taliban commanders. Having Bagram under friendly control allows Pakistani operators to coordinate with Beijing on shielding CPEC infrastructure, preempting militant attacks, and monitoring Indian military moves. Pakistani media also uses the U.S. withdrawal as propaganda, framing it as proof of Western decay and the efficiency of Muslim Brotherhood, even as security inside Pakistan deteriorates thanks to blowback from cross-border Afghan operations. While power plays swirl above ground, a shadow war rages beneath the headlines in neighboring Balochistan. Balochistan, Pakistan's southwestern province, constitutes the linchpin of China's Belt and Road ambitions in South Asia. CPEC routes, critical highways, and deep-water ports like Gwadar snake through arid mountains and deserts of Balochistan, connecting Chinese industry to Middle Eastern markets. Control of Balochistan ensures secure supply chains for energy, minerals, and manufactured goods. Yet it's also a persistent flashpoint, riven by decades of insurgency, ethnic tension, and newly emerging terror networks. Here, the United States has leveraged intelligence networks and local assets to destabilize CPEC, especially since the failed Afghan peace process. For Washington, disrupting CPEC slows Chinese economic growth, undermines Beijing's strategic reach, and keeps Central Asian corridors open for American interests. A key U.S. tool has been the Central Intelligence Agency, coordinating rebel, separatist, and anti-government operations in the region. While American officials publicly deny direct involvement, media reports and regional analyses point to a robust covert program run from safe houses across the Afghan border, and earlier, from bases like Bagram. The CIA's historic links to Balochi militants and their operations have roots dating to the Soviet-Afghan War. Baloch rebel camps, often financed by Western sources, found safe haven in Afghan territory during every major Pakistani military offensive. Afghan intelligence facilitated BLA commanders' movement. Local warlords received payment for hosting rebel chiefs. U.S. trainers advised sabotage teams targeting Chinese engineers and convoy routes. After 2001, the U.S. used Bagram as a staging point for drone strikes, special reconnaissance missions, and surveillance flights over suspected militant camps tucked away in Afghan valleys facing Pakistan. Coordination was tight. When Islamabad launched major counterinsurgency actions in Waziristan and Balochistan, CIA operatives funneled actionable intelligence to dissident networks and maintained supply drops for their operations. By 2012, as the U.S. drawdown accelerated, Pakistani officials claimed over 30 militant camps in Afghanistan were actively supported by foreign intelligence agencies. In 2018, Islam Baloch, the founder of the BLA and mastermind of the Gwadar terrorist campaign targeting Chinese interests, was killed in Afghanistan. Afghan officials admitted housing separatists for years, while American analysts highlighted cross-border collaboration between Afghan officials and U.S. intelligence stations. Recently, as Chinese ambitions in Balochistan grew, the U.S. sought every avenue to disrupt logistics and sabotage infrastructure. Attacks on road convoys, assassinations of Chinese engineers, and bombings near CPEC facilities increased. The BLA and its Majid Brigade received international support, according to security studies, from a variety of rivals to Beijing and Islamabad, including quiet encouragement, strategic guidance, and conditionally plausible deniability from Western sources. In August 2025, Washington designated BLA and its offshoots as foreign terrorist organizations, a move interpreted by most analysts as both a pushback against Chinese narrative control and a calculated pressure tactic to force Beijing into more expensive security commitments. For Washington, Bagram's utility as an operations base applied directly to this covert struggle. Surveillance flights originating from Bagram could monitor CPEC construction, relay critical radio intercepts from militant cells, and stage extraction teams for asset recovery or emergency evacuation. Nearly every major insurgent attack on CPEC infrastructure traced back to militant logistics columns operating out of Afghanistan, with Bagram at the heart of their organizational and support network. When President Trump references reclaiming the base to foil CPEC plans, he's not speaking in hypotheticals. Intelligence circles regard Bagram as indispensable for resuming offensive operations in support of U.S. strategy. China, aware of this threat, responded emphatically. Its military planners rapidly expanded base security, laid out new anti-air defenses in western Pakistan, and poured resources into electronic warfare systems to jam and intercept Western signals. Chinese negotiators pressed the Taliban to deny the U.S. any future basing rights, warning Kabul that American reconnaissance from Bagram could translate into lethal results for Chinese nationals in Balochistan or Gwadar. Joint Chinese-Pakistani counterintelligence teams now operate in select locations, blending advanced surveillance technology with fast-response commando units trained to counter sabotage before it strikes. In recent months, several major attacks against CPEC projects have been foiled, each investigation producing evidence of planning in Afghanistan and involvement from rebel cells with ties to Western handlers. This shadow play casts a long influence over regional stability. Pakistani officials, burned by decades of ignored pleas to both Washington and Kabul, lobby the UN and international forums for bans on BLA networks operating outside Pakistan. They cite repeated Taliban reluctance to expel foreign operatives, the frequent escape of wanted militants toward Afghanistan, and the persistent reluctance of U.S. officials to recognize the full scope of cross-border interference. Controlling Bagram is thus not just a tactical need. It symbolizes which power truly dictates events across the heart of Eurasia. If America retakes control, military options in Balochistan open back up, including overt and covert efforts to disrupt China's Belt and Road progress and degrade Pakistani security. If China secures Bagram for itself, the region's strategic balance will tip for years. India and the U.S. forced to operate at risk, Pakistan emboldened by proximity to Chinese defense infrastructure, and the Taliban charging exorbitant rents for access to the world's most contested airbase. The current round of negotiations, threats, and public posturing is driven by this reality. When Trump or his successors speak of getting Bagram back, they signal the urgent need to recover lost ground, not only for prestige, but for the power to shape events in Balochistan, disrupt Chinese economic expansion, and operate freely against militant and terrorist threats in the region. For all parties, what happens to Bagram will echo beyond the Afghan mountains. It will set the terms for the next chapter in the Indo-Pacific rivalry, the prospects for stability in Pakistan and Iran, and the fates of billions whose lives depend on the thin line between shadow war and open conflict. And so, as the world watches new threats on social media, CIA activity in Balochistan, Chinese maneuvering at Bagram, and American efforts to recapture lost ground, it becomes clear. The contest for this airbase isn't simply about strategic logistics. It's a battle over who will direct the future of Eurasia, a future built not on empty runways, but on the raw, unyielding struggle for political, economic, and military supremacy.